Hey friends, it's Christy and I'm thrilled to be back guest designing with my favorite things. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Cutieasaurus stamp set. So I'm stamping out my images with extreme black hybrid ink onto some Copic friendly cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers today. I'm starting with BG10, BG11, and BG13, and I'll be coloring this brontosaurus over on the left. And I'm using the BG13 to start. I'm going to lay in some shadows with that color. Now I did notice as I began to color with this that my marker was really dry, so I'm actually going to switch to the chisel tip, which I don't use very often, so it was a little bit more wet than the other end, and just add in a little bit of that color so that I can begin to blend that out with my midtone, which is going to be the BG11. And I actually didn't mind that I wasn't able to get too much of that darker color anyway, since I was going for a much softer look on today's card, but I will definitely be giving that marker a refill before I use it again. Once I finish up with my mid-tone, I'm going to come in with my lightest shade, the BG10, and I'm just going to fill in the remaining area. And I'm being careful not to color over the little hearts on the back, since I want those to be a different shade. For those, I'll be using RV23 and RV25. I'm just using the two shades since all of these little areas are so tiny. I'm also going to use them to color in the scales down her back. So I'm using the RV25 first to lay in a little bit of darkness, and then I'm going to blend that out to the left with the RV23. And I did color in her toes with the RV25 as well. For the triceratops, I'm using V20, V22, V25, and V28. I started with the V28 and put a little bit of shadow on the edge of her plate that's on the back of her head and also on the underside of her body. Then I came in with the V25, and I was surprised to find that it was a little bit darker than the V28. You can see me checking the marker barrel to make sure that I didn't mix up my caps, but this was the V25. But since both colors were already there, I decided to just skip down to the V22 and begin blending that out. So I am going to have to work a little bit more to get that to soften up, since that is a much lighter shade. But I'm just going to continue working on that until I'm happy with the result. And I'm saving a little bit of space left over for that lightest shade, that V20. So I'll color in the rest of her face and then go around the spots on her body. Some of them were hard to miss, but since the shade was so pale, I decided it really didn't matter. And then I went back to my RV23 and RV25 to color in the rest of her little details. So the edge of the plate and also her horn and all the little spots on her back. The palm tree trunks I colored in with E77 and E79. I did the E79 on the outer curve, and then I'm shading towards the inside with the E77. I decided that it needed a paler shade that was getting a little bit too dark for me, so I pulled in the E74 for the inside edge. For the palm fronds, I'm using YG61, YG63, and YG67, and I decided just to color one of these on screen since they're both going to be exactly the same. I started with the YG67 towards the inside of the palm tree, and then blended towards the middle with the YG63, and then finished with the YG61 on the edges. And then I'm going to use the YG63 and YG67 to color in the little grasses as well. To finish up the coloring, I'm taking the BG10 and adding a little bit of shading to my clouds, and I'll soften that up with the colorless blender so it fades into the white, and then I will trim all these out with the matching dyes. To build my scene, I'm taking a piece of snow cone cardstock trimmed down with the A2 stitch rectangle stacks set 2. To that, I'm going to add a sour apple border that I trimmed with the Grassy Hills Die-namics. And then I'm going to tuck in 2 Grapesicle snow-capped mountains. And I'm not going to use the snow caps since this is a dinosaur card and I don't know if there would have been snow caps, so we're just going to use the mountain pieces. And these are the 2 smaller of the hills in that set. To that, I'm going to add a piece of Grout gray cardstock that I trimmed down with the spring scene builder, and then I can begin to add my images. I want my dinosaurs to be facing each other, so I'm going to take the brontosaurus first, and I'm going to glue her down over on the left-hand side since she's facing to the right. And I'm just setting her lightly in place at this point because I'm not exactly sure, where everything is going to need to be placed. I may have to slide things around a little bit. So I'm just carefully setting her down and then adding the tree that I knew that I wanted over on the left, and then I can shift her just a little bit, and that's the great thing about using liquid adhesive. So then I can add the triceratops over on the right since she's facing left, and I can adjust her as well. That glue takes a few seconds to dry permanent, so I have that little bit of wiggle room. And then the smaller of the palm trees I'm going to tuck into the grassy border over on the right. The 2 clouds I'm going to adhere so that they are overlapping the mountains, and that serves 2 purposes. First of all, they don't look so strange without their snow caps, and second of all, it's going to really give them some height since it's going to make them look as if they're reaching up into the clouds. And then the last thing is just to add in some of these little grass clusters. So I'm adding 1 over to the right and left so that it's nicely balanced. And then the third one I'm going to tuck into the center between the 2 dinosaurs. For my sentiment, I'm going to take the same piece of white cardstock that I used to color my images, and I'm going to stamp out the You're Extraordinary sentiment. This has some great punny sentiments for all ages in this set. And then while I have my MISTI out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using a Grapesicle card base, and I'm going to stamp out the Tyrannosaurus and the sentiment that says, "Sending an extra large hug." The pattern papers that I'm using today are from the new Sweet Stack 6x6. I'm going to take the larger piece with the striped pattern and glue that down to cover the entire card front. So it is 4 1/4 tall by 5 1/2 wide. Then I have a contrasting print with a tiny white heart, and that is going to get glued down in the center. That one is 2 1/2 inches tall by 5 1/2 wide. Then I can grab my focal panel and peel off the release papers from the foam tape that I've added to the back. That will give it a little bit of dimension. And I'm going to line that up in the center and then press that down into place. I've trimmed down my sentiment with the largest of the essential slanted sentiment strips. So I'll add a little bit of glue to the back of that and glue that at the top of my focal panel. And I did also use the A2 stitch rectangle stacks to give it that stitch detail so it would be flush with the edge of the focal panel. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside. I hope you guys have enjoyed the January edition of Christy Gets Crafty with my favorite things. If you did, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up, and you can leave me a comment down below. I'd love to read your feedback. Subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Bye-bye!